So the question is, if it's true, and you could both comment on whether it's true or not, that there's a consensus cross-ideological that the country's going in the wrong direction, that we need fundamental reform in the direction of the country. So how do you, in elections, and not just in presidential, the next big election is 2018, which is a different media, right? Governorship here, state legislature, et cetera. What kind of media can we do? What can we do to create a media where people actually get exposed to ideas on what kind of reforms would actually improve their lives, actually would open up opportunity and increase economic equality and stop the whole divide going on where literally we're getting rising inequality? Because right now, and John and Robert McChesney just wrote a book on automation and jobs.
Another issue that wasn't discussed.
Yes. There's a natural trend to have fewer and fewer job opportunities unless we intervene as a democracy. Yeah. And that wasn't discussed in the election. So, and I know, Mary, you spent a lot of time looking at right-wing think tanks and media and what they're doing, right, at the Center for Media and Democracy. So what is your sense of, and they weren't in the mainstream 30 years ago. They forced their ideas into the public mind to the point where they're asked by debate moderators, as John pointed out. So what are your thoughts on how we even get to the point where we can have the discussions with the public we need to? It might need to be more sensational than we'd like, but particularly coming into the midterm elections in 2018.
Well, a few years ago, a year and a half ago or something, there was a big to-do because it looked like the Koch brothers were going to take over the Chicago Tribune. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everybody was like, oh my God, this can't happen. Does anyone know a billionaire who can buy it instead?
Yeah, I mean, a better billionaire.
There were literally conversations like this. Does anyone know anyone else who could buy it? And I just sort of was amazed at that conversation because at the time people were going on and on about this. They didn't seem to be aware that the Koch brothers already had their media in 40 U.S. state houses. And that is the Franklin Center for Government, whatever the heck it's called, Integrity and Accountability or something, known here in Wisconsin as the Wisconsin Watchdog. So Wisconsin Watchdog here has a website and one reporter, or 1.5 reporters in the state capitol, Matt Kittle. You guys might have heard of him. He's written 378 articles about the John Doe. And not one of them correct.
Fair and balanced.
And so the Koch's sort of preferred network of funders and preferred funding mechanism is a mechanism called Donors Capital and Donors Trust. They're investment vehicles. There's a little bit, they like to say it's just like Charles Schwab, but Charles Schwab was not created by right-wing billionaires to influence our society and our ideas and our thinking. And these billionaires have thrown millions of dollars into think tanks, and those think tanks are called the State Policy Network. Mm-hmm. They sort of attach this media outlet to those think tanks at first, and now they've sort of spun off a little bit on their own, which is the Franklin Center. Then they have their ALEC legislators, American Legislative Exchange Council legislators. ALEC is like a $9 million institution. Franklin Center is an $11 million institution. The network of 69 think tanks across the United States is, we don't know how big it is exactly, but it's a centrally sort of funded 80-some million dollar institution. This is big money. And they've invested a lot into their program, which is now going to be hitting us front and center of whether we're going to cut the size of the federal government in half. And they have been funding and gunning for Obamacare in a big way. And everybody's sort of like, why do the Koch brothers, these sort of fossil fuel guys, care? What do they care about the insurance industry? Why are they involved in this? And there was just this one telling interview in the New York Times a number of years ago by Tim Phillips, who's the head of Americans for Prosperity, which is the Koch brothers' grassroots group. Maybe a few of them have knocked on some of your doors. They pay teenagers to do door knocking. They don't have any real grassroots, so they pay people to do door knocking. And they've done a lot. They opened 9 offices in our state this year, so they've knocked on a lot of doors this year. Where was I going with this?
They are shaping the debate.
They are totally totally trying to shape the debate. And the only hope at the federal level is that, Paul Ryan is a total creature of this mechanism, of the Kochs. They praise him, they laud him, they fund him, they support him. And he did not get along perfectly with the Trumper. And we'll see whether those tensions are still there. We'll see whether Trump actually will stand up a little bit to this agenda and fight back. But whatever Paul Ryan does, we have to fight back, and we have to be telling the story and the real truth of all these issues and the real truth of what these stunning cuts will do to America. And so, I'm very impressed by Radioactive and what you guys are doing here. When there was the uprising in the Wisconsin Capitol, I clicked on Sly in the morning at 6 a.m. to hear what had happened. What did I need to know? What was happening today? Where was the protest? What time was the protest? Where was it going to be? Was it going to be on the east side of the Capitol or the west side of the Capitol? What time do I have to be there? At noon, I could turn into Wart and say, what happened today? Who were the newsmakers? Who did they interview? And at 5 o'clock, as you're sort of headed home, you could turn into 92.1 to hear Doug Cunningham at the mic tell you what had happened that day. It was essential for the Madison area, at least. I don't know where you guys were tuning in here, but it was essential for the Madison area for us to know what the heck was happening or where you needed to be, and no, they're not going to have a hearing here, they're going to have a hearing there, and this kind of stuff. It was absolutely essential to the Madison uprising, and it's absolutely essential that Milwaukee have more of this kind of radio, because the fights might be getting harder and the fights might be getting tougher. I am very worried that Paul Ryan was endorsed wholeheartedly by the police associations across America. And we know that people are emboldened. People have been emboldened to be taking racist actions and more aggressive actions. And I'm very worried about these emboldened police officers and police killings already in cities like ours. And so we need to know more than ever what's happening and what's happening in our local community. And so this is, I think, an essential project. And we want to hear a little bit more about it, because 92.1 is not airing anymore. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately... Right,
they canceled the Devil's Advocates with 10 days' notice.
They canceled they canceled Bill Press, they canceled everybody right after the election. Unfortunately, they've canceled Sly.
Yeah, Sly's he's still out of Monroe, right? Or did they? Yeah.
His show in Monroe is gone.
Oh, it is?
Yes, and that happened also after the election.
Oh, I never hear that.
It's not
breaking news from
breaking news. And so this is a huge problem for our state, that even in the liberal center like Madison, we're losing these progressive voices. Now, one station is Clear Channel, but the other station is a small, privately owned station. And so an ownership model where we all own it, like Wart, is one we have to take a look at seriously. And when we own our community organizers and when we invest in this kind of ground building is really, really important.
Yeah, we'll get to that, all of this, when we'll get to Q&A very soon. Just one kind of final question before we go to the audience for questions. And, oh, by the way, Mary talked about that infrastructure and the right-wing think tanks. The Wisconsin affiliates are the McIver Institute and the Wisconsin Policy Research Institute, WPRI. Mm-hmm. So you see their stuff a lot. And then there's other media, like Media Trackers, for example, which is an even more Breitbartish kind of thing. So, which is now mainstream, apparently, right?